Good morning, everybody. We're just giving it a minute so everybody can get in to the room, and then we will go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. We're just going to give it one more minute until we get everybody in, and then we'll get started. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on our Carpentry Apprenticeship Program. Really glad that you could make it, and we will be recording this, so if you have questions or you want to go back and look at it later, you can feel free to do that. My name is Lori Graff. I'm the CEO of the Maryland Building Industry Association, and before I turn it over, I just wanted to do a couple of quick comments. Also, you can use the Q&A function to ask questions, and Paula, who's going to be kind of moderating, will address those as they come up, or through our question and answer period. So first of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming. And I also just wanted to address the fact that this has been something that we've been working on for a long time, as far as trying to figure out the best way to address the shortage of our trades through our industry. I've been with this association since 2007, and it has been a huge challenge for us as an industry. We just had some meetings with our federal delegation, our federal elected officials, and this was the #1 issue that we talked to them about, was the workforce development and getting more people into the trades. So we're really excited about this program, and we're hoping that we can to expand it as much as we possibly can in the future. I also wanted to kind of give a shout out to some of our Remodelers Council, specifically Paula Baller, who I'm going to turn it over to in a moment. She's really been very instrumental, and she spent a lot of time trying to get this together, as well as some of our other panelists. So thanks everybody for everything that they do. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Paula.
So good morning. Hi, everybody. I'm Paula Baylor. I'm from T.W. Perry and a member of the MBIA Remodelers and Custom Builders Council. And we have been working on this for months and partnering with DLR, their apprenticeship and adult training director. And in May, we received our official we've been officially sanctioned as a residential carpentry apprenticeship program in Maryland, and we are the first of our kind. So this is a 3-year apprenticeship. It includes on-the-job training and online training. So hopefully we'll answer a lot of your questions today, and we have a great group of panelists, so I'm gonna get ready to go. So first we have Chris McClarian. He's the Director of Apprenticeship and Training for Maryland DLR, and Chris has worked with us to help establish this program. And so, Chris, do you want to give an overview of our residential carpentry apprenticeship?
Sure. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Paula, for the introduction, for having me. My name is Chris McClarian. I'm the Director of Apprenticeship for the state of Maryland for the Maryland Department of Labor. We manage all of the apprenticeship programs throughout the state of Maryland. The residential carpentry program that the MBIA has set up is the first residential apprenticeship carpentry program that we have throughout the state. Generally, carpentry apprenticeships have been for heavy industry, mostly for prevailing wage and scale style projects. So this one is really nice to see added to the state repertoire. It's going to be a great experience, I think, for everybody. The program is a little bit diverse, and I'll just give a quick overview on the applicants that you are looking for, or that will be eligible for the program, will be apprentices of 18 years of age or older. They should have a high school diploma and a GED, live somewhere in the state of Maryland, but that's not required, and just be physically able to perform the duties with access to reliable transportation for the apprentices. The program will be made up of employers across the state. Anybody that has a residential carpentry or remodeling, anything that falls within that niche occupation. Like I said earlier, anything except for prevailing wage style work. The program itself will last 6,000 hours. It's a 3-year apprenticeship program that will couple on-the-job training for the apprentices with education which will be provided by Penn Foster, mostly an online-based educational platform. So the on-the-job training and the related instruction coupled together will create a journey worker in the occupation of residential carpentry. Paula, I'll turn back to you.
Great. So when your apprentice works his way through this program, at the end, that apprentice will actually receive a certificate from the state of Maryland that has national recognition. So this is a very structured and very official apprenticeship. So Drew Furman is from Penn Foster. He's the managing director of Workforce Solutions, and Penn Foster is going to be providing the online educational component for our classes. So Drew, do you want to take a minute and introduce Penn Foster and what your role is in this?
Sure. Thank you for your time and welcome everyone. Penn Foster is as Chris said, we are an online education platform and we have a number of business units. We've been providing training to the trades for almost 140 years. And we've morphed into a digital education platform. We are a high school, accredited high school, one of the largest in the country by number of graduates. We are a college, largely associate degrees wrapped around career development and including some programs for the trades. And then we have a career school, and that career school covers a number of different industrial verticals, one of which is the trades, the building trades. And where I fit in is I work with employers on workforce development, largely in support of work-based apprenticeship, as we are doing here. So we provide the technical instruction, related technical instruction that's required to fulfill the requirements of any of the DOL apprenticeships. And we'll get further into the specifics on the technical instruction for this program, but we support about 40 different crafts in our apprenticeship programs.
Well, next we have Joe Smith. He's principal at Ellings Brothers Contracting. Joe's been a longtime member of MBIA, and he enthusiastically was one of the first businesses to sign up to be part of the Carpenter Apprenticeship Program. So Joe, do you want to take a minute to talk about why you've jumped on board and why you're excited about this?
Thanks, Paula. Yeah, so, you know, I fight this battle, my peers and I, all the time, and it's always, I've always struggled with trying to get new and young help. Our workforce is aging, and so it's always been sort of a passion of mine to sort of kick this thing off, but time is always the enemy here. So finally, I think this year, when I mentioned it to everybody, we had some people willing to jump in, including Paula, really took it by the horns. And I had originally met and was going to just start it internally. And then I thought, wow, we could do this through the association to sort of make it a better program. So, you know, talking to some different people, Tim Ellis, who had already used Penn Foster, and then working with Drew at Penn Foster. So we became, yes, he and I talked to the state, and I felt like this would be a better fit overall for the association. So that's how we got down this path. And then everybody else chipped in to help out, and Paula's taken the bull by the horn. So for me personally, I want to be able to grow a business that I can have, you know, be remote somewhat at some point and actually retire and be a guy that can, you know, work a little bit and have a sales force and all that. And until I have people to build the product, I can't do anything. So for us, it's really critical to get young help. And I was just talking to one of our remodeling council members who says he wants to hire 20 carpenters in the next 2 years. 20. You can't find one right now. So the apprenticeship program is a way for us to attract both new members, but also recruit young help that may not be ready for college. So to that point, I think I was telling the group a little bit earlier that I have an interview today with a young man who reached out for a friend who I'm friends with his father, and said his son's not really cut out for college. He's been in college, he's going to drop out now, and he wants a career. So I told him about the apprenticeship program. He was excited and wanted to come in today. I talked to him Friday, he said, I want to come in today and get started. So we're going to interview him today. So that's a very positive initial benefit that I wouldn't have had in my pocket sort of as a tool down the road.
Well, that's awesome and very exciting also. So hopefully we'll fulfill all of that for you, Joe.
Well, we're going to have to all put together a little effort. You know, we're just going to have to all keep tweak it as we go. And the benefit to this whole thing, Paul, if I might add, was that, you know, Drew had we talked about this originally. If something's not working, we can tweak it as we go or add. So there is some flexibility in this program, and the state said as long as we record it, and, you know, Chris could maybe interject there. But so as we find this working or little things that aren't working, we can improve that. But we felt like we need to get something started and then see how that goes.
That is very true. It is a flexible situation that we're in, and we're looking for input from anybody who's participating in the program. So, Chris, do you want to address some of the requirements for an employer who's considering hiring an apprentice? I know they need to work under someone like a journeyman. There's some documentation they need to do.
Sure. For the employer specifically, the first step is really to make sure that you're working with the MBIA and that you've been approved as a participating employer. There is 2 forms that are right on our website. You can get them directly from the association, in which we'll collect some basic information about your program. Some of the key components that we're looking for is, you know, the name of your business, where you're located, the number of journey workers you have in the occupation. This is pretty important, is because in apprenticeship in the state of Maryland, we make sure that every apprentice has a journey worker assigned to work with him or with her. So what we do is we make sure that if you say you have 8 apprentices, that you have at least 8 journey workers to really make sure that they get the skilled guidance that they need as they progress through their apprenticeship. We also collect some demographic data that helps us to look at the apprenticeship program across the state of Maryland as a whole to see who makes up our program and to make sure that we represent the communities that we're working in every day. And then we collect the wage information, which is important to make sure that your apprentices are progressing progressively on the wage chart established by you, the employer. Those forms will go to the association, who then submits them on your behalf to us. For the apprentice themselves, there's an apprenticeship agreement. It's also right on our website. You'll probably get that directly from the association, but you can also download it right off of the site, in which we'll collect some basic information about the apprentice themselves. That will go back to your association, who will act as an interface with the Maryland Department of Labor. So you, as the employer, will have less contact with the Department of Labor and more contact with your association, and then we will interface with the association themselves, making this a little bit more seamless and a little bit easier for you yourself. Paul, did you want me to go through the apprentices requirements as well?
Sure, that'd be great.
Your association and the contractors that are participating have set up some basic requirements. Everybody that's going to be an apprentice should be 18 years of age. Your association has built in some flexibility, which you heard Joe mention a little while ago, is that you can take a high school student. If that high school student is accepted, somebody that's 16 or 17 years of age, they must be registered as an apprentice through the association, and they'll participate while they're in high school. This allows you to recruit into the high school directly and open up a pathway into the skilled trades for students that might not know it's there. Joe mentioned a minute ago having somebody that wasn't cut out for college that wanted to apply. We have found that one of the best ways to find new talent is to advertise directly with the high schools. Let them know that there are these opportunities for high school juniors or seniors or new graduates. Help move them directly into the workforce so that they don't graduate and then linger and work at jobs that really aren't moving them on the career path they might otherwise want to be on. And it allows you to get a worker, an apprentice, that hasn't picked up a lot of bad habits in the workforce. So you really get somebody new, and you can help to bring them along and show them the culture and the craftsmanship that goes with your company and bring them up the ranks, if you will. They've kept it very broad for you, so there's a lot of flexibility. Again, is the residence requirement for your program is waived. It can be Maryland, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. The key component is making sure the apprentice can physically perform the duties, and they have ability to get to and from the job. So have a car, a driver's license, or they can ride with one of your journey workers. However you've worked it out as an employer that you feel is good for your company is acceptable for us. And last, we talked about it briefly when I opened. This is a 3-year apprenticeship program. So it's built over 6,000 hours of work where the apprentice will learn on the job from that journey worker while they also go to school. That's a minimum of 144 hours a year of online training for your apprentices. And I'll pause there, Paul, unless there's anything specific you want me to hit besides those points.
Well, I was going to mention that the on-job training, we've also produced an outline of those hours. So it's 6,000 hours for an adult apprentice. That's 2,000 hours a year of on-the-job training. And we've set up Because so often you hire that new person, you're going to call them an apprentice, but you don't have that roadmap to walk them through the skills that they should be learning over the next few years. So we've made that roadmap for you to follow. Again, as Jim mentioned, it's a very flexible one that we can tweak. But and then if you have a youth apprentice, they have to do 450 hours per year of on-the-job training. So some of the things that are covered in our on-the-job training are safety rules and practices, that's 300 hours, learning safe use of tools, materials, job site safety. Carpentry rules and practices, 600 hours, 15 steps we've outlined in tool use, measuring tools, materials usage. We have a millwork, 400 hours, 3 steps, skill saw, table saw, sander, drill, measuring again. So you can see we've tried to be very comprehensive so that you have benchmarks to walk that apprentice through, or your journeyman is walking that apprentice through, that can be measured and outlined in the end. So, Drew, do you want to talk about the online requirement, the number of hours, the cost of tuition, all that sort of thing?
Sure. So, of course, all the apprenticeships with the DOL require related technical instruction to be taken by the apprentice, and that can be done online or through other means. Through us, obviously, it will be done online. The requirement for study hours in any apprentice with the DOL is a minimum of 144 hours per year. As this is a 3-year program, we actually have put together a program that averages 147 hours of 441 total hours of study time, all of which will be done, in our case, it'll be done online. There will be some learning aids in year 2, and I believe there's 2 or 3 textbooks. All of those will be provided with the tuition. And as you have a textbook, you'll get reading assignments through an online study guide. All of the exams that a student takes are taken online, and they get graded, and we maintain a transcript that the employer can then turn over to the DLR to demonstrate or to verify that the technical instruction has been completed. We call it annual technical instruction. However, it's not unusual for an apprentice to accelerate their technical instruction. They can't do that on the job because 2,000 hours are 2,000 hours. However, it's, as I said, not unusual for someone to maybe complete earlier depending on how much time they have to dedicate to that study. The tuition for the apprentices is $750 per apprentice per year. So the total for this apprenticeship is $2,250. And I won't go into an area that's outside of my jurisdiction, but there are funds, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that, available to offset and reimburse some of those RTI costs.
Hey, Paula, could I interject here real quick?
Absolutely.
Hey, Drew, could you just speak real briefly about, I know one of the things that interested us when we were going through this, we were looking through the curriculum and kind of tweaking the curriculum, was the initial, I think you called it communications, and started for someone assuming they're new to the industry, how to communicate with homeowners. I mean, some of those critical sort of early step things, just maybe a really brief summary of that sort of thing.
Sure. Part of the year 1 curriculum or lesson plan is what we call our career readiness program. And I think that's what Joe was referring to. And it is, it's about 18 hours of an 18 or 20 hour program. There's 9 lessons. Each of them is focused on either professional, personal, or communication skills. And as Joe said, this is typically, typically in an industry that is customer facing would put an employee through this program. Certainly if they are new hires. And so we thought that as in the residential carpentry, of course, you're in people's homes, you're all of your employees. And I find that I was in the building trades, I find that the carpenters are typically the leads on the projects. And so it's not unusual that a homeowner would come to the carpenter who is typically on the job most frequently to get answers. So it's important that they know how to communicate with the public, that they don't do that in abbreviations in all caps, and those types of things. So this is a program or a learning module that we often put in front of at the start of apprenticeship programs to get that important soft skills out of the way.
Thank you.
Yep.
So that's great. So we have now an employee that you're hiring as an apprentice. It's going to do 2,000 hours of on-the-job training that first year. They're going to do 144 hours of online training, the first 20 of which is that career readiness that Joe and Drew just talked about. So now you have made a financial commitment, Joe, when you've hired this apprentice right off the bat. And so how do you justify, I'm willing to make this expense and take this leap of faith?
Well, Paul, that's a great question. There's a couple things. A, I would probably do it anyway. We're very pro training at our company, so we feel like that the more they learn, the better. And the way we look at it is, if you just keep coming to me every year, okay, you have a year review, and then what have you done? Well, I just expect $1 raise, well, or $2 raise, or well, what did you do to improve yourself to make you worth more other than just being here another year? So for us, the training is a way for them to be measured and for us to measure them and to help them grow. And hey, I want to bring these apprentices up, the sooner the better, because we want them to run jobs. That's how we make money. So we're very pro training. And for me, I would cover the cost anyway. And then we structure that in a way that they have to have a B or better, and they have to do a certain amount of time. We're going to have a document that they have to sign, and if they leave, they have to reimburse me, things like that. So having said that, they're going to have to be self-sufficient. Really, if they're not going to make it anyway. So the other part of this whole scenario is the possible credit from the state of Maryland to help and pay for these costs. So it's almost a no-brainer right now in this world. If you need help, and we all need helpers anyway, and then you train him up, the faster he gets trained, the better we all are.
Which is a perfect segue into, Chris, do you want to talk about some of the tax benefits and possible grant funds that are available to employers to recoup some of the expenses they're going to make for a first-time apprentice?
Sure, absolutely. And I agree with everything that Joe just said, really. It's you're investing in a helper, or you're investing just a little bit more in an apprentice, and you're getting a highly skilled worker at the end of it. One of the key parts of apprenticeship is this is definitely not charity. You're not doing this for free. You have a business to run, and the end goal is to make sure that your apprentices become journey workers that can help you grow your business and increase the amount of work that you can bring in, as well as the scope of work that they're doing when they're on the job every day. Helpers are great, but really at the end of the day, everybody needs skilled journey workers, right? So about 2.5 years ago, Governor Hogan, 3 years ago, Governor Hogan used a fair amount of our federal workforce dollars. He put that into something called the Maryland Business Works. That program's been going on 3 years. We have had $1.5 million invested in that fund. About 80% of the fund has gone to registered apprenticeship. What that enables us to do is for every year of an apprenticeship that you have, or if you have an apprentice registered, we can reimburse 50% of the cost of the education. So if an apprentice is related instructor at Penn Foster, and I'm going to round this up for math's sake to make it simple, but if Penn Foster charged $1,000 a year for an apprentice, we can reimburse up to $500 of that educational cost each year. The key caveats of that is that you have to be a Maryland-based employer, your apprentices are paying taxes, unemployment insurance taxes in Maryland, and that you have 500 or less employees. The last thing is that they have to work for you for 6 months or longer. So if you started them as an apprentice, and for the first 6 months of their employment, they were going through the on-the-job training, and then as the 7th month of employment starts, you can start them at school. That's how they could become eligible for that reimbursement. The second one is that we have a new grant. It's a state apprenticeship expansion grant. I'm going to just go quickly through this one because your association has also applied for funds that are very similar to this. But this grant will pay for the entire first year of the apprenticeship program in terms of the educational costs. So again, if Penn Foster was $1,000, this grant will pay for the entirety of the $1,000 of the first years of education. Then the second and third year, you're welcome to come use Maryland Business Works for the 50% reimbursement. So in the example I just outlined, if you were paying Penn Foster $3,000 worth of education over 3 years, if you were to merge those two programs together and use them successfully, that $3,000 program would only cost $1,000 at the end of the day. And last is there's an apprenticeship tax credit. The credit for the year 2019 is expiring now. The year 2020, this tax credit gets funded in 2021. So next year you'll be receiving outreach through your association through the MBIA, where every new apprentice registered to a maximum of 5 per company per year is eligible for a $3,000 tax credit. The previous tax credit was a maximum of $1,000, so this one is going to be significantly larger. Again, it's limited to 5 per employer, but that's $15,000 maximum worth of tax credits per year. So it's a pretty significant incentive to invest in your employees and to help grow your workforce and to provide that upskilling that you need to grow your business as well. Paula?
Well, that was a lot of information really fast. But if you want to get more, see that in writing and more details, we can get that too. If you want to shoot us an email or something, we can get you something more concrete to look at financially. So, Drew, do you want to give an overview of that first year apprentices online coursework? What classes are they covering that first year?
Sure. First, I'd like to say that we're happy to round up to $1,000 if Chris wants us to do that.
Let's not say we did.
Just shows what good negotiators we were, right?
There you go. There you go. So yeah, and I can hit all 3 years real quick, but year 1 is that career readiness program, as we said, and then it's very typical that we would include in the first year of any apprenticeship some foundational instruction. So in this case, we've got math for the trades, we've got practical measurements, trade safety, and then we get into, then we start the building trades content. So we start with an introduction to the building trades specific to home remodeling next, and then we get into home renovation. And then year 2 is kind of the bulk of the, what I'll call the trade specific training around the home renovation and home building, and specifically residential carpentry, building materials, tools, then the various parts of a house that you might work on: floors, walls, stairs. We do talk about older home framing, balloon framing, and those types of things that the carpenter might come up against. Then get into some of the finish work around windows, doors, siding, interior finishes. And then we do have specific lessons on the finishing a basement, finishing a bathroom, and then finishing a kitchen. So specifics around what's required in those 3 settings. And then the final part of the instruction in the 3rd year is to get a little bit about what happens as you are, as Joe and his as an example, and his team are bidding on a job, developing a job, designing a job. So we've got introduction to construction estimating that will be using Excel. And then we do have a lesson on a quick review of AutoCAD construction drawing. We thought that would be useful for the carpenter to know a little bit about what happens in the office before they start working on the project. So that's kind of a summary of years 1 through 3. As I said, you're talking about 440 some hours of technical instruction.
Paula, I think that, if I may, that's if you think about that whole thing, the way we operate in possibly home builders, there are a lot of management duties along with carpentry, right? So as they become journeymen and move to that next stage, those background skills, understanding why we need to do something this way, or if they're working on estimating, they understand, oh, it takes longer. All that stuff is beneficial to us as companies, because we can engage and possibly develop future leaders for the company, as we move forward. So that's why that's, I think, a key component to that whole program.
And that curriculum just builds on itself. The 2nd year, they're looking at understanding construction drawings. By the 3rd year, they're getting an introduction to CAD. I mean, it really is a very progressive online education experience. So
yeah, and then what some clients in this environment will do is, if you have a student or an apprentice, an employee who shows an inclination or the ability to go on into supervision or something along those lines, they may keep them in the online learning environment. And we've got programs in our associate degrees around around engineering and even construction management. So there's always an opportunity for them to continue that career path beyond the apprenticeship if they show that inclination and those abilities. So to your point, Paula, this not only builds within its curriculum, but it can go on to even further their education.
Paula, one more thing. I also think that the familiarity with the terminology as they're going through this. So, when my guys are working, they've got to get work done. So the training thing is a burden I put on them. But if they're working with a new apprentice who's going through this class, and to use the term you just used, Drew, they hear balloon framing. Well, what is balloon framing? Well, now light bulb, I've dealt with that. I've seen that online, and now at least now it's practical, right? Knowledge. So that's where that stuff can pay off, down the road. Sort of just acknowledgement of terminology, and it's not homeowner speak, it's more contractor speak, but that's where I think we can benefit from that.
No, that's so true. We forget about the industry terminology we use every day, fascia boards and trim and baseboards, and does that new person coming on know that? And there's this level of intimidation that you can have too as a young person with that journeyman, and you're going to ask the questions. So to be able to balance, and the online curriculum really balances so well with our on-the-job training curriculum. So right. So Chris, for that employer that's wondering, where am I going to find an apprentice? I can't find a carpenter. It's hard to find anybody right now. MBIA is obviously going to put it on their website, which we have a link right now. It's the MBIA website has a tab specifically for apprenticeship. They have social media. We have chapters and councils all across the state. We're going to push this out through, but how can DLR or the state help us? Where are we finding our apprentice?
One of the great things about building an apprenticeship system is establishing and expanding a network of places that you can go to look for labor. We're coming out of a difficult time period, obviously, with COVID-19. I know the layoff numbers throughout the state were extremely high, but in construction, where it remained an essential business, work remained fairly steady, and in some areas it even increased. Interesting that you asked that question this morning, Paula, because I was on a call Friday with a large electrical sponsor, and one of his major employers is hiring 25 new apprentices, and another one's hiring 30. So basically opening up the door for 55 people to come into their program that was not expected just 2 or 3 days earlier. So I say all that to kind of point to what we do as a network together, as a collective. Is within the state of Maryland, there are 12 local workforce areas spread out across the state of Maryland, and about 30 American job centers. This is where job seekers go, people that are looking for work, trying to reattach themselves to the workforce, maybe after they've lost their jobs, in some cases after they've graduated high school or college, but they're just not finding the career that they're looking for. We also work with like in this case with your association, with the MBIA, to network with local high schools throughout the state of Maryland. You're a statewide program, so we will connect you directly with the career and technology education schools throughout the state, as well as the regular high schools where kids didn't go into a trades program while they were in high school, but they're just the regular graduates. But they might have an interest in construction and in the skilled trades, so we'll help to connect you there as well. Your program's able to go through and be approved by the VA so that you can attract veterans as they're coming out of military service. It could be a veteran that did 3 or 4 years of service, or somebody that's retiring after 20 years but's looking to change it up and to get into the construction industry. There's a lot of nonprofit groups, a lot of different community groups throughout the state of Maryland that we network with. Some of those that we provide pre-apprenticeship training funding to, so that as these individuals are emerging from a job training program, they can connect directly over to you for employment. That's been extremely successful for us over the last several years. And then last is on our website, in about 2 weeks, we'll have an update where the MBIA's program will also be put onto our apprenticeship locator. And that's where we refer all of our job seekers that are looking for apprenticeship programs. If you're looking for a job in construction, and specific with carpentry, and even more specific, residential carpentry, you can go right on the website. You can narrow your search down just to that occupation, and it brings you to the sponsor, which in this case, you're the only sponsor. It brings you directly to that sponsor for information on how you can reach out, be registered to be placed with an employer. So you'll now have the benefit of the association, as well as the state and the American Job Centers and high school systems but all will try to work seamlessly with you to make sure that we're sending new talent your way. Really, the big part at the end of the day for you is to make sure that you're hiring individuals that are looking for work. Register them as apprentice and keep growing your system.
Well, that's encouraging. Now, Drew, we've talked a little bit about the employer making that financial investment in tuition. They're making a big investment in training on the job. Is there a way that they can monitor that online program, that their employees actually completing it and they're doing well?
Yeah, so we have a number of ways to do that. The students themselves will be able to monitor their progress right online. There's an accounting for the grades they've scored, the last exam they've taken, and how they've done. And it'll actually tell them where they should be in their studies. For the employer or the sponsor, we have a dashboard, what we call our progress portal, which we will give access to, and the employer has somebody participating in the program. That's in real time, so you can go on. You'll see that what lessons the apprentice has completed, what grades they've scored. To Joe's point, if you have a requirement around a minimum grade average, then you'll be able to see that right in the dashboard, and you can print reports from the dashboard. What we'll also do is provide reports that will have that information, and we can push those out to the participating employees with some frequency. We typically do that monthly so that you can see the progress, and that'll have all the information that is provided for in the dashboard, which is primarily the last exam taken, what the score on that exam was, and then a summary or detail on each of the exams they've taken and the scores they've achieved. And finally, when the student completes, they can order a transcript, which you can then put with the rest of the paperwork that's necessary for the DLR to submit for confirmation that the program has been completed successfully.
So Joe, it sounds like you have an opportunity to sign up an apprentice pretty soon, and you're going to use this as a recruitment tool. So
Yeah.
Talk about how where your apprentice is going to come from, how you're going to use this to find the best employee.
Well, actually, believe it or not, I can relate this back to golf. He's a golf buddy, and I'm always sort of mentioning how help is not a good thing. So this also helps me confirm that I need to golf more for my wife. So on that, but they knew I was a contractor, and he just emailed me and said, "Hey, I've got my son. He's not working out in college. He's a hands-on guy. He really likes that, you know." So that's how I do it. We also have an incentive for all of our group here. Every employee has an incentive program. If they recruit anybody, then they stay over 90 days, and they get a kicker, to help us. So we're trying all kinds of different things. We've tried a lot of different things, but really, I've been always wanting to get back into the schools. I think we have to catch them sort of in the schools and start getting that information out there. So that's, to me, is ultimately the best way to get some youth and or some veterans. Maybe that's not actually another area that could potentially be a good area. They've already gone through some training. They understand training and protocols, so that's not a bad thing.
And we were pushing so hard to have this approved for that May meeting of DLR's approval crew, because it lined up perfectly with that high school graduation timing. So if you wanted to bring in a high school graduate now for the summer and start counting those hours, or if you have somebody who's going to be a senior next year, and maybe they can get in some summer hours now, and when they go back to school this fall, whether it be traditional or online, maybe they can continue to work for your company. So
we do that a lot, Paula. I'm sorry. We do that a lot. Every summer we have people that come and just work for the summer. Sometimes it's not a career choice. It's just, hey, the relatives or friends of friends, and they want to work. And so we're always open to that, because we always need young help anyway. And sometimes we have one or two that actually work out. So we're always doing that. And if now they would get some benefit from that, from a credential standpoint. So it's a win-win, in my opinion.
Which is a great segue into Chris. Let's say a remodeler has somebody on their staff right now who's basically just a laborer, they're just humping things from one place to another and pushing a broom. Can they now register that employee as an apprentice in a way to advance their career with the company and make them more valuable to the world and to the company?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, earlier when we started the call, you had kind of referenced that you can look at your employees that you currently have on, and there's a couple things that you can do. There is a lot of flexibility in these programs. Is one, you may have somebody that was a laborer or helper that's picked up some of the entry-level tasks. You know, as you analyze that employee against the work processes, you may determine that this individual already has 1,000 hours worth of work that you want to credit him or her. So you can approach them and basically say to the individual, look, I think you're on the right path. I think that we can help you to accelerate your career. You have a place in this company. We can give you 1,000 hours of credit and move you into this apprenticeship program. That apprentice automatically is escalated in, and they just have to start their school. It could be that you have a laborer that just really hasn't shown much in the way of wanting to advance. The apprenticeship program can also be a tool to say, look, you know, you might think you're stuck as a laborer, but if you just show us a little bit of effort, show us that you want to be here, you're coming in on time, you've got a little bit of a pep in your step, and you know, this is clearly the career path you're looking for, we can offer you the apprenticeship program. We can offer you the education, the credentials that come with it, along with the raises as you begin to move forward in your apprenticeship. So now the employee, they kind of see their pathway. They see that they're starting off at a very entry-level wage, but they can see what the reward is at the end of the apprenticeship program. They're going to progress through it, and as long as they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, the employer is going to continue to help guide them through. So I think it's a great tool for existing incumbent workers, whether laborers, helpers, or maybe even somebody that's doing something outside of the actual craft itself that might want to hop over and become a residential carpenter and a journey worker at the end. So absolutely.
Well, that's exciting also, very exciting. So Drew, we have this apprentice that's signed up, they're taking their on-the-job training, their online classes. I know that you have a lot of experience with this nationally. So are there some challenges that apprentice is going to face now working online?
Yeah, I think those challenges won't be any different than our students face in general. And so, we are focused. We have over 150,000 students that enroll in our programs across our business units annually. So we've got the scale, we've got the experience, and our focus is on the middle skilled worker, and that's defined by DOL as somebody whose work requires an associate degree or less. And so we cater to the working adult in that space. As an example, in our high school, probably 90% or more of the students are working adults who've aged out of the public school system. So we've built our programs around serving the working adult. And our programs are very flexible. So all of our technology is mobile first. So you can study on any device that can access the internet. So be it a phone, a tablet, a laptop. In fact, more than 65% of the studies done in our system in general are done on a phone, and then students tend to go to a laptop or a tablet to take the exams. The only thing I would caution against, or I would say, not caution against, but I would tell you in advance, is to make sure that your apprentices are aware that they should try to get to Wi-Fi when they're studying, if they're studying online. You don't want them being provided free training only to find out that their data plan has gotten eaten up. So I'll tell you that from experience. Panera Breads, if they're available, public libraries, even your office, and certainly their homes probably have Wi-Fi. But that's one thing I would encourage. So then our programs all have academic and system support in the way of human teachers, teaching assistants, and technical instructors. So as you get into our online platform, there's a lot of areas that provide online help. We call it surround sound. We know that our students are studying off hours, so we try to provide them as much help in the program or in the system as possible. But when that's not possible, they can schedule time with one of our faculty and speak live with a teaching assistant or a teacher, or as I said, a technical instructor who has experience in the trades. And they can schedule that time during business hours or when they're available. So we try to really enhance that online experience with human assistance and instruction where needed.
And Drew, we actually have a question from you from the audience. I know Tim Ellis has 2 or 3 employees currently already taking the first year of the Penn Foster class. And one of his guys finished it in, I want to say 6 or 7 months is what he told me. So what are the hours for your school? Is it 24 hours? Is it 365 days a year? When can they be taking their classes?
Yeah, I should have started out with to say that all of our programs are asynchronous, meaning that you start when you want and you finish when you can. Everything is self-paced, and students study on their own time and when and where they can. In addition to 65% of the studies being done on a phone, they're done in about 18-minute increments. So you can see that working adults who have other things to do in their lives, and children and families, take any downtime possible to do their studies. Someone who's finished one of our programs in 6 to 7 months does not surprise me. It depends on the program that they're in. This program is built, the foundation of it is our home renovation and repair program. And then we sandwich that between that foundational instruction, math, career readiness, safety that I spoke about, and then that AutoCAD and construction estimating programs. So if they've completed that home renovation program in, let's say, 7 or 8 months, I wouldn't be surprised. As I said earlier, that it's oftentimes students get out in front of their technical instruction, but that would only be year 2 of this program. And I know that one of the MBI members, who Joe spoke about earlier, has 4 of their employees already in this program, not in the apprenticeship program, although a few have now enrolled in that, but we're in that program that makes up the bulk of year 2. So this program is designed to take, 3 years. It meets those requirements. As I said, you may accelerate and complete it faster. All of our studies are done self-paced. You can do them when and where you have the availability and the time to do it. And our students, if you had 10 students start on the same day, it's unlikely that those 10 students would finish on the same day. Everybody works at their own pace.
So that's great. So you can work all week, and if you're an early morning person, get up Saturday morning and do some online training, and then Sunday night you could be working on it a little bit. And
one of the big advantages to online training is that there are no summer breaks, there's no Christmas break, there's no spring break, so students just study on through. And so, while I do talk about working adults, we have a lot of students in our high school, as an example, who don't go to traditional high school, they're homeschooled. And they do that we have professional athletes in our program because they're on tour. They get to study in our programs. So there is a significant element of convenience to all of this. You don't need to be somewhere at 6 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon after you've done a full day's work.
And so something we were not really familiar with just 6 months ago, we've all become very familiar with 3 or 4 months. So I know I have a teacher who uses my basement for a classroom. So let's see. So Joe, we talked about, you and I both, I think everybody who's been on this committee are extremely passionate about building this workforce and bringing in these new apprentices. So how do you see, big picture, this affecting the industry long term?
Well, I think that there's obviously a critical need for the I think some youth. I keep saying that word, but we do need some youth. Doesn't mean I don't hire people that are experienced already, but we need some youth to sort of bring up the rear here and be able to build the products and build the products you sell and make these homeowners nice. And all these homeowners now are realizing they may be home more often than not, so they need some people here to help them get home offices and outdoor living so they can sustain this at-home living. But I feel like from a local industry, it's going to benefit us both as an association and just industry-wide. I think that whether you're a home builder, they may have a different need than a remodeler, but I think this covers both those needs, and that was certainly one of our goals going through this, to make this experience sort of universal across there. They need carpenters to work for their subs. A lot of home builders use subcontractors, but those subcontractors still need carpenters, to work for the builders, to put the trim up, to put the doors up, all those things. So it's a win-win, I think. I think we just have to stay with it and monitor it and tweak it as we go to make it just better for everybody. But I'm very excited, and as you mentioned, Tim was already very positive about the Penn Foster. That's how I got involved. So I think I know some of my fellow board members who are remodelers all are in desperate need of people, just qualified people who want to learn a little bit.
And one of the things that we learned going through this process that DLR did explain to us is this is scalable. Once we understand how this apprenticeship works efficiently, we can apply it to other trades. So the potential for this to continue to grow over time is enormous. And it's just a matter of us getting this first step and rolling through this first year and making this first cohort a success. So we actually have some questions that are rolling in. So I'm going to share those with everybody. One of the questions is from Christine. Is the program currently listed on the Penn Foster website? So can people start to register on the Penn Foster?
So it's not on our website, as it's a custom program built specifically for this apprenticeship, but anybody can certainly reach out to me. I think Carrie has put out my contact information on the MBI website as part of the apprenticeship communication. But if not, we can get that posted somewhere. But this would have to come through me, and there's a verification process as far as them being members of the MBIA, et cetera.
So to summarize for everybody on the call, in order to be part of the residential carpentry apprenticeship program, you have to be a member of MBIA. MBIA is our sponsor. That is who's going to administer all the paperwork. So you would need to join MBIA or be a current member in order to be part of registering as an apprenticeship employer. And then all of that is actually on the website. And the website is, while we're here, www.marylandbuilders.org/apprenticeship. So George is asking a question about wages, and that's one of the things, George, that makes our apprenticeship so unique in the state of Maryland. The commercial carpentry apprenticeships are tied to wage scale that you mentioned. So we are not. We did put some summary of wages in our application. We talked about an apprentice making 50% of a journeyman, and we estimated a journeyman's pay to be $24 an hour, or $25 an hour. So that puts your apprentice at about $14 an hour. And Chris, if I'm not making that clear and you want to jump in, feel free to talk more about the wages.
Sure. So the easiest way to look at this is the association, just as you said, has established what they believe is the average journey worker wage rate for a residential carpenter across the state of Maryland. As of the time of registration, that rate was $24 an hour. As Paula mentioned earlier, these programs, and Joe kind of reinforced it as well, you can come back to the council over and over to make changes to your program. So as you add more and more employers to your program and more apprentices are being registered, that $24 an hour average wage rate may go down or it may go up. What that means to the individual employer is not quite as much. If an individual employer has an average wage rate of $20 or $30, you pay your progression based on your own individual employer's rate. That average journey worker wage rate is more for the state to look at and for the public to understand that when you're going into this occupation, you're going to average about $24 an hour. So somebody in Western Maryland or on the shore, they might make a little bit less, whereas somebody in Prince George or Montgomery County, their business might pay a little bit more. And the idea, again, is if you start at 50%, just do it off your employer scale. So don't be alarmed by an average for the industry. And then the last piece I'll point out is that it is extremely important that we use the word average, because that's a collective average of all the employers, and it's done that way because the association doesn't dictate a mandatory wage to the employers to dictate to their apprentices. That's something that's done only in unionized programs and this is not a unionized program, obviously. So the employers drive the wages. So again, just it's always in your best interest, in our opinion, to be transparent about your journey worker wage, because it does reflect on your program, and it does send a message to job seekers, to high school students, parents, teachers, educators across the board, just how valuable this occupation is, and just what a career in this could look like as your apprentices become journey workers and progress onwards and upwards.
I would like to reinforce that too, Paula, just that you can pay more. We were just trying to guesstimate what the average would be for the state of Maryland, right? Because as Chris just mentioned, you know, you have Western Maryland or you know, Eastern Shore versus, so we were coming, our average wage scale is probably going to be a little higher in the Baltimore metro market, which again, at some point, maybe we want that out there so that we're recruiting sort of people. But we have the choice of paying more if you want, but that's just really a benchmark, I think, for an average.
Another question that we have, Drew, is there any accommodation for someone with a learning disability?
Good question.
You had experience with that.
I can't speak to having experience with that with any particular client. Everything we have is written on 8th grade level, which is typical in the industry. Learning disability, I don't have a good answer for that right now. If I can get one for you, I'll send it to Carrie, and well, I will get one for you. Send it to Carrie, and she can maybe distribute it to the folks who are on the call if that works. Because I don't have experience with it personally with my employer base, so I'll reach out and get an answer. I'm sure we have something I can share.
All right. Does anyone else out there have another question? We're open for questions. So, Chris, we've kind of outlined the steps and stages of becoming part of this. What's the very first thing that someone needs to do now if they're interested? Is it, do I direct them back to our MBIA website where we have the forms for employers and apprentices to get started?
So I would say yes, and I would say for the employers, this is also a unique opportunity to sit with yourself, Joe, the entire MBI team, and form a robust apprenticeship committee as well. That committee will guide all aspects of your program, as well as how to apply and what you're going to do moving forward in terms of businesses and apprentices. So I would encourage you to also look at adding employers to that, because this is a way that you can own the program yourselves and constantly build and grow it.
So anybody, I'm going to go around and give everybody a chance to give final thoughts. So Drew, do you have any final thoughts that you want to add to?
I think this is really exciting. You know, we do some carpenter apprenticeship, primarily with some unions, to have something focused on residential carpenter, I think is really cool. And, you know, some of the discussion today and discussion I've had over the last few months with all of you around recruiting in high schools, I think is really exciting. We do have one member who's already enrolled some of their employees in this program who has a high school student included in that. And it brought a smile on my face when I saw that person's age. So I think it's really exciting. I think you guys have done a great job building this program. We look forward to being a part of it. And, you know, I think as this grows and you can grow out into other trades, we look forward to being a part of that as well. So job well done by all of you.
And I think that member is Tim Ellis. I know he always reflects very positively on his experience as an apprentice. And he was one of the people who helped spearhead and brought a lot of us to the table to make this happen. So shout out to Tim. Joe, do you have any final thoughts? You're going to wrap up what you're thinking?
I think I'm just excited for the program. I think it's been a long time. We tried one about right before the downturn, got it up and running, sort of an in-house training and brought people in, but it was nowhere as comprehensive as this. We had to shut it down in the downturn. This is something more sustainable, more repeatable, and that's what I'm excited about. And I think just from a selfish standpoint, it would help my company and the MBIA sort of grow their membership, which benefits us all. So that's where I'll leave it.
And I think we've talked a little bit about following COVID, the number of people who are now possibly looking for a career change. And so the timing with this has been excellent for us. You know, we're up, ready to go, ready to roll right now. And if you know somebody, I know I've been talking it up a lot too. If you know somebody who's looking or thinking to change, now's the time, because we just need some employers to sign on board, and then we will find apprentices to fill those spots. Remember that this is an employee of your company. MBIA is just the sponsor. So that apprentice is being paid and accountable to you. Chris did give a little sidebar about a grant that we did apply for recently. And we're waiting to hear if we've received that grant, because that would really scale and boost our program immensely. Looking through my notes to make sure I didn't forget anything. You can make an agreement with your apprentice, your own personal agreement, whether it be a sweat equity pledge or, as Joe talked about, their commitment to you. But what we found in doing this is retention is somewhere, Chris, I want to say in the 90th percentile for someone who has an apprentice stay on board with them.
So our surveys are done by a third party, paid for by the U.S. Department of Labor to assure accuracy. The last survey that came out was 1 year after the completion of an apprenticeship program. The retention rate with that same employer was at 94%, which in the day of the millennial is pretty fantastic.
That's outstanding.
And Chris, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave with us?
I think I said it earlier. I'm really excited about it. We've seen a lot of apprenticeship programs over the last several years. I've always wondered why these industries that were doing non-prevailing wage work weren't looking for, as Joe said, like, you know, a validated, registered program that really adds a lot of credence to your industry. It's a great recruitment tool. I'm seriously excited. I am hopeful. I know you mentioned earlier, Paula, that this could also be a way to expand. Many of you do other work that has its own apprenticeship program, whether it's painting or roofing or drywalling. There's just a lot of occupations out there that go unfilled or, you know, are second thoughts to job seekers. People just don't realize that there is an educational component that comes with learning these crafts. This isn't something that you can just pick up on a Monday morning and by Tuesday you can call yourself a carpenter or an electrician or whatever. I think that it's going to be driven by your employer base, and I hope the association's employers really do embrace this. And I think the sky's the limit over the next several years as you scale this program up. It's really exciting. I'm happy to help however we can.
Well, it has been a great partnership with DLR, Penn Foster, and the Maryland Remodelers and Custom Builders Council. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have any questions, you can reach us through the marylandbuilders.org website. The documents you need to fill out are all on there. All of us are available to answer questions, and we're all very excited. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.